What is up, everybody? Anthony here, and welcome back to another video here on Inoculate Productions. And in today's video, I'm going to review Backrooms. So I saw Backrooms once, thought it was pretty good, then I saw it a second time, and things clicked even more for me. Now, with Backrooms, Kane Parsons is the director. He's the youngest filmmaker to reach #1 in the box office, which is insane. And it's really cool to see this era of YouTube filmmakers really just doing their thing and being, genuine with their work. And between Obsession and Backrooms, it's been a pretty crazy couple of weeks. And, this is a film that I went into knowing a little bit about the Backrooms lore and the 4chan posts and the Creepypasta stuff. So I was a little more prepared going into this with what may be happening in this film as far as, like, the idea. But I didn't know the characters. I didn't know how it was going to be written. How the movie was going to play out or anything like that. But Backrooms, I think, specifically is kind of exposing the whole, like, liminal space thing with the endless spaces that are just empty and stuff that I actually find pretty cool and fascinating and comforting. Like, I love liminal space photos from back in the day. The music that a lot of people put on YouTube with these liminal pictures. Like, you wake up in 1995 and nobody's there, like those kind of videos. Like, I like that. I find them comforting. Some people find them creepy. This kind of takes that space of, the liminal space, the emptiness, and obviously the endless nature of it, how maze-like it is. And in this film, we have Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Clark, who is down on his luck. He is a furniture store salesman when he is supposed to be an architect, so he's a failed architect. He's going through a divorce. He lost the house that he paid for and he got kicked out of. He's staying at the store, like literally, like sleeping in the bed in the furniture store, like literally nothing, like just completely down on his luck. His therapist, Mary Klein, played by Renate Reinsve, is a therapist that has, audiobooks. She, is, I guess, somewhat successful, but there's still something that is kind of lurking behind closed doors that you kind of see her going through. So I think both characters in this film are struggling with some kind of, past trauma, current trauma, and these characters aren't perfect per se, right? So very much like I said about Obsession, where, like, not every character is perfect and the friend group had flaws and stuff like that. These characters that you're basically with in this movie, for the most part, it's a very small cast. Like, there's other people that show up, but it's very either short-lived or it's, like, towards the end. These are the main two you're focusing on. But they all struggle with something. They all struggle with their past. They have these, crazy dreams. They, have something that they're not quite right. They want to get things to where they feel completely comfortable. And so I think it kind of plays with that, because when Clark discovers the Backrooms in his basement of his furniture store, again, it's that empty space that just goes on forever. Furniture is in the middle of the room, just kind of piled weirdly. Physics don't make sense. There's things that are stuck, like, upside down or sideways, or, like, very trippy visuals. And that leads me to shout out Jeremy Cox, who is the cinematographer on this, because the way this thing was shot, with the use of wide lenses and everything being, further set back, and you can't quite make out what's at the end of that hallway because the way that it's being shot. Fantastic work. Like, really great camera work, great lighting. And the Backrooms has that, yellow tint to everything. The walls are yellow. The fluorescent light hum that is throughout this movie as well is very unsettling. Like, it just gives you that, like, feeling of really being in the Backrooms and really discovering things as you peel back each layer of the Backrooms. And very similar to my last review, I'm not going to get into much spoilers until towards, like, the very end here, but I just want to say that the biggest thing that I like about this movie is just the fact that how it does kind of play with that psychological kind of horror aspect of it. There's a little bit of analog horror in there, or found footage stuff in there. But in my opinion, it's done very well and very effective. It doesn't overstay its welcome. The whole film is not a found footage movie, as you can tell if you saw the trailers or screenshots, But it does kind of play with that a little bit, because his original series on YouTube is found footage analog horror, like, straight up. So the way that they approached this was, like, how do we bring that in where Clark is discovering this thing and he's fascinated by the Backrooms? He's got to bring his coworker in there and someone that has a camera so he can bring the therapist back proof that he is in fact exploring the Backrooms. And like I said, the music as well, very creepy, very subtle, very much fits that liminal space kind of vibe with how the movie is. And I think that's the biggest thing that you're going to get from this, is that it's just very unsettling. It's not like scary per se. Like some people might find this stuff a little bit more scary and creepy. I guess it depends on who's watching the film. It doesn't have a crazy sense of dread like something like Obsession. And I'm not trying to keep comparing it to Obsession. I'm just like saying, based off my last review where I was saying, hey, you know, the tension and stuff like that. There is tension here, but it's done in a way where it's very much a, you know, slower burn as you get like deeper into the Backrooms and things start unraveling and things from, you know, your memory, your past, you know, things start to mess with you. It starts to manipulate things. And that's what I liked about it. Obviously there is some stuff that still isn't really being explained by the end of this film, so there's still some questions that I had. I understand that Kane Parsons is like building this world, and apparently he wants to do more movies, and I'm sure after the success of this, he's going to be doing more movies that might explain some of the lore. But some of it wasn't really explained as much, and maybe in the short series he does, but the way that some of this movie drops stuff on you and you're kind of just left hanging with it, even the second time around, I was like, that still doesn't really make sense. But then there's a lot of things that are quick shots, quick glimpses, things that characters say that when I saw this a second time, I was like, oh shit, it's talking about this or it's referencing this. So, you know, with most psychological horror films or films that are kind of more of a slower burn and you really have to get into it, and there's quick things that they throw that if you look away or you look down to get, you know, your popcorn or your drink, you'll miss it. You know, and that's kind of what this movie is. Now, some stuff is more straightforward that they try to like say, okay, this is exactly what this is. Let's move on. But some stuff doesn't quite fit that way. It's more up to interpretation. I think the acting in this is phenomenal. The cinematography is top notch with how it captures the liminal space of the back room. The soundtrack, the score is very well done. I just like the way that this movie feels, how it's shot, how it really pulls you in, and it gets weirder and weirder as stuff goes on. Like I said, it's not a straight up horror film. There, you know, is some stuff I guess that could be considered like jump scare-ish, but it's not cheap jump scares. It's done pretty, you know, pretty well within the space, like something you would expect to see in a back room, right? In some of the horror kind of games that have been around or the interpretation. So I feel like everything that I saw wasn't like they just did it just because they knew it was going to be a cheap scare. It was done because it was planted there on purpose, so you can catch the certain side angle or the certain, you know, dimly lit hallway or someone sitting in a corner or standing down. You know, there was a lot of cool visuals in this movie, and I really enjoyed it. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I do think that there is some stuff that needs to be tweaked or explained. Like next time, there is some stuff that is still very confusing. But I really enjoyed it. I found myself liking it the first time. Like I said, I liked it, but I was like, okay, like maybe I wouldn't go see this in the theater. Like if someone were to ask me, like, would you want to see this in the theater, right? After the first time. And like, you could probably wait for streaming. And that might be the case if this isn't really like your thing. 'Cause it's again, very like a little artsy, you know, but not too artsy, but it's not as straightforward as another horror film you might see, in a theater. But then when I saw it the second time, I was like, no, actually, I would recommend to see this in the theater because it's like the way you're seeing it on a big screen and the way that the music is and the way that the acting is and everything like that. It really does make you entranced in this Backrooms. And I think that it might be a little lost on people if you watch it at home, but that's just my opinion. But I would recommend this. I think that overall, you know, there's a lot of cool things that this film does that I haven't really seen done in recent years as terms of like visual stuff. Like obviously the analog horror found footage stuff, it could seem a little tiresome. Like a lot of people might be like, oh God, all right. Like we've seen this before. It's not really that effective. You know, what happens when the guy goes through the wall and then he ends up somewhere else, you know, little things like that in that found footage like way where it kind of like teleports the character sometimes, or the way the movement is with the camera and shit like that. But other than that, I did really enjoy it. I'm going to try to stay away from like number ratings in the future, because like I don't want to box my opinion in sometimes with numbers. So I know I gave Obsession an 8 out of 10, but I would actually give this an 8 out of 10. I actually enjoyed this just as much for different reasons, because I went in thinking that it was going to be exactly what it was, and that's what I got, and I actually enjoyed it more the second time. But I would say for this review and Obsession being my last time I kind of give just like number reviews, because I feel like just kind of listing the positives and the negatives is like good enough. But yeah, 8 out of 10, I would say. I would recommend Backrooms. So let's get into spoiler territory with Backrooms, and I won't go on about this for too long, but just little things, because some of my flaws go within the spoilers that I had with the film. Now, they try to explain this because there's this company, Async, and they originally made MRI machines in this film, and then they discovered the Backrooms, and that's where their research ended up being more focused on, the Backrooms. And that's why you see these security cameras, and you see this guy with his family, you know, watching Clark in the Backrooms, and, you know, trying to identify. Like, when Mary finally gets captured after she defeats the pirate Clark, which, again, was definitely crazy and a little unsettling. Not very scary, but just, like, you know, the pirate Clark kind of represents, I guess, like, his, like, I guess not fake self, but just kind of like what he became. And, you know, she keeps talking about like looking through the window. There's a lot of like, you know, look through the window and you'll find yourself. And then he says, look, I looked through the window and I don't think I'll be coming back. And it's almost like he's like recognized that the Backrooms for Clark is where he's supposed to be, because he feels like he has that sense of control. Because everything in there is part of like memories and misremembering and like these images, whether it's the girl in the corner when he's sitting at the table that represents his wife. He doesn't even refer to her as like the name or anything else. It's like a representation of what his ex-wife basically was. And all these things in here, it's all based on his brain and how it kind of like misremembers or remembers or like past things. It all kind of brings him in and pulls him in, so he feels like he can finally just have that control, until, you know, we finally see the fear himself, I guess, of Clark, and that's what the pirate is. That's how I interpreted it. And it, you know, obviously bites the hell out of Clark, real Clark, or insane Clark now. And we do see Clark's body recovered in one of the rooms real quickly, real fast. I missed it the first time. You know, so I don't know the status of it. I mean, it sounds like he died from getting bit, but I don't know if they recovered his body, Clark's body, like normal Clark, or what became insane Clark, or the pirate Clark body. Because there's a scene where Mary's getting captured by like the scientist hazmat suit dudes, and she's being turned around and she looks and you see someone laying on like a gurney or like a stretcher, or like on some bed in a room, and like it looked like Clark, but again, it's like, would Clark actually survive that if that actually is what happened to him in the Backrooms? I don't know. So again, a little confusing, but I kind of got it more the second time. And then, of course, like I said, the whole looking through the window when she approaches the wall and you see the pirate, and it's Clark, and because he dresses up as a pirate in his commercials, he does these like, you know, really rinky-dink commercials that are shot, you know, with a VHS camera. He's desperate to get people in there, and he dresses up as a pirate. So I think that represents who he doesn't want to be. Like, that's not really him. Like, it's like, it's not like I'm dressing up in the stupid pirate suit, this shit's stupid. Like, that was his mindset when he was doing those commercials, just to get people, begging people to come into his store, where I feel like that represents kind of like that side of him that he does not like. And then it's almost like that grew bigger than him. That's why the pirate's so tall. These are just my interpretations of it. But then with Mary, you know, it becomes her. Like, she goes into the door, she runs away when pirate Clark is chasing her, and then she runs to the door, and then all of a sudden it's like childhood homes and it's like neighborhoods, and then it's her Backrooms. Her version of the Backrooms is different than Clark's versions of the Backrooms, if that makes sense. And so, because she has trauma, like there's a scene where even during a party, she like goes into a cabinet and she grabs something real quick and she takes it and she puts it back. I don't know if it's like a drug, or I don't know if it's like something that, you know, it's something like where it's very fast, and I saw it the first time, but I didn't even think about it. And I saw it the second time, and I'm like, oh no, she's like going through something. She has the trauma of her mom going in a psych ward and being agoraphobe, like, you can't go outside, don't go outside, you keep seeing all this stuff, and then her childhood home being destroyed. And she has the handprint from the cement that she carries with her, and that ends up saving her. So I feel like her memories, in a way, almost saved her, because that was the last piece of her childhood that she had, that she was able to, you know, get the pirate Clark away from her when she was getting grabbed. There's a lot of things like that in this movie where it's like, is this what it means? Like, I'm not quite sure, but I think I'm making sense of it. But yeah, her backrooms are completely different. So by the time she's questioned about it, and, you know, he's just like, hey, look, the scientist, you know, finally sits her down when she breaks through the backroom section that actually has the scientists in there that are trying to, like, I guess they put this like sleeping gas in there, or this, you know, they try to knock her out. And then he's basically trying to explain to her, like, again, we used to make MRI machines, and these are all misremembered copies of, like, reality, so it's a little bit different. And they don't know if they can even let her go. They basically said, look, that's not up to me. And so, again, little weird, like, you just don't really know. And then it cuts to the end where she's sitting in the interrogation room, or what was the interrogation room, by herself, and she's all, like, misremember, like, her eyes are all, like, messed up, like, and then it just ends. And I don't think that that's actually Mary at the end. I think that that's just a copy or a memory after she entered the back rooms, but we don't really know, like, what happens to, like, I guess, real Mary, I guess is what I should say. So it's a little odd of an ending, but, like, once you kind of sit back and think about it for a little bit, or you see it a second time, you can kind of say, okay, like, they're trying to kind of build a lot of this stuff up and try to build what async is and let people know if they do multiple films. But I'm curious to see, like, what actually happened to Mary. And Clark obviously didn't look like it ended well for him, but again, these are things that you pick up the second time, and, like, these are just my interpretations. They could be completely wrong. I think that's where the movie, sometimes the whole, like, leaving it up to your interpretation can be good or bad, because, like, it can kind of leave you feeling like a little, like, oh man, if only they had a little bit more definitive stuff. And it feels like they tried to bring some stuff in towards the end that makes it more like, let's explain this to modern audiences. And it kind of just felt a little lackluster, you know? So some of the explanation stuff I just felt like could have been done a little bit more tighter, a little bit more cleaner. But that's it. You know, I don't really have much else to say about Backrooms. I just want to say that I did enjoy it. I still give it an 8 out of 10. I did actually really like it more the second time. It's a different type of film than Obsession, so I give both 8s. But for different reasons, obviously, because I do like psychological horror. So I feel like if you're going to lean more into that, you'll definitely like Backrooms. So definitely check this out in the theater if you can. And if not, watching it on streaming is definitely not a bad thing either. You could still be immersed. You could still pick up on all the weirdness and all the quirky shit that's in here. That's really well done. Yeah, so let me know what you think of Backrooms. Leave a comment down below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos here on Inoculate Productions. Take care.